How's it going, everyone? Welcome into the Coffee Break yet again. My name is Hunter Thomas, and the Coffee Break is a show where I take you kind of behind the scenes on what's going on at my company, Foundation Disc Golf, and what it's like to run a small business in a very niche sport. So, pretty exciting week, both last week and this upcoming week. I think last week was the exciting week. I'm getting all my days mixed up and confused here, but it was last week. So we got a lot of things to kind of talk through that went down last week. We got some stuff coming up this week that's really exciting. And then, as you can probably tell from the title, I wanted to kind of go over, I was writing up this post for LinkedIn because I haven't posted on there in a long time. And I figured to make a good coffee break segment for me to kind of like expand on it a little bit, which is 5 reasons that I think that this post-COVID slump, if you want to call it that, is actually good for disc golf, and some positive things that I think can come out of this. So first off, as I always do, some updates on what's going on in Foundation this week. So first off, the Team Champion Series, Innova's like Tour Series discs for their Team Champion players released yesterday. So that's live over on foundationdiscs.com right now. A bunch of cool different discs there. Really, some really sweet ones. The Swirly Star T-Bird for Vino Makala. Really, the Swirly Star, I think there's a T-Bird and there's another one, maybe an Eagle. Came out really good. Really good run of Star there. And then this weekend is Personality Disc Restock Weekend. So we have the Trevor Cashes dropping. We have the Connor Shamans. We have the brand new Robbie C. Wizard. And we just got a new disc for me in that I don't know if it's dropping this weekend. It wasn't the original plan, so I'm going to imagine it's not. But just know there's something fun coming. I'm really excited about this one. So we have something fun coming this weekend too. And then in addition to that, these actually dropped last week, but it got kind of all mixed up in the what we dubbed Dark Horse Friday because we dropped new Brody stuff. But we had a bunch of new apparel release. Actually, this dropped with the site, but we finally have it in hand because it's print on demand. So we got our what we're wearing for it. So I'm rocking. This is, I think we ended up calling this just like the modern Foundation logo. So this is the same hoodie we ran for the Black Friday hoodies, so we knew we absolutely loved this hoodie. It's just an oversized fit hoodie, and then love this logo. So we ran this on hoodies and on shirts, so I got it in the black shirt here. All the shirts are on comfort colors because we love comfort colors. In addition to that, our designer whipped up this new logo, which these hats I don't think are on the site yet. I actually ordered this one as a sample because I wanted to make sure, but it's this fun parked logo. So we have that on hats, and then we dropped them on short sleeves, and then I have the long sleeve shirt here, which I think is sweet, really fun design. And the final thing, we might have dropped one more. Oh, we dropped the Mr. Unlimited shirt as well, but the final thing I have on my desk here is the just nice Foundation logo on the front and in the back. Good throw, bad shot. Really fun design there. I got the, I think this is technically just white, or it might have been ivory, with a green. A bunch of different colors available. So a bunch of new apparel hit the site. So that's all live right now. And these hats are going to be live probably before this episode's live. These hats are going live this week. Now that I know, they're actually really good quality. With print on demand, whenever it's the first time ordering something, we just never know what exactly it's going to be. So we always order an example one first. Unlike these hoodies, we already knew the quality because we've already ran them before, so we knew exactly what we were doing with them. Because sometimes different garments print a little bit different. The logo can end up in different places when you're working with a third-party person, so you got to order a sample first. That's what this hat was, to make sure the embroidery came out good and all of that, which it did. So super stoked to be bringing this to the site. The other big thing that dropped last week was our Ezra announcement. So that was announcement 3 of 4. So we had the new website design, Brody's store becoming a part of Foundation, sponsoring Ezra, and then the fourth one is probably into this month, beginning of next month, will be our final announcement of the first quarter, which is super exciting. But a lot of questions around our Ezra signing because this is our first time sponsoring a pro in quite a while. So some people are saying, asking, is it the same as how we work with Robbie C? What's the structure like? What's to be expected? So I figured I would briefly answer those. more or less, we went after Ezra. We DM'd him and talked to his agent because we just felt like he was a really, really good fit for our brand. His values align with our values. He has a great personality that wasn't really getting shown too much, and obviously he has a very high ceiling as a player. And so it kind of just all fit together. We hung out with him some when he was here for Worlds, filmed some content with him. He stopped by the shop a few times, talked to him in the coffee shop, that type of stuff, and I got to know him a little bit. And everyone on the team meshed really well with him. And so what was most intriguing to us was, yes, it's a player who has a lot of potential on the course, but more so, we felt like our audience, you all would actually really enjoy getting to know him and really enjoy content when he was a part of it. So we felt like it was a really good fit where his brand and our brand could mesh really well together, and it be something that really works both ways, where we can help grow his audience, help grow his personality, but also it elevates our brand and elevates our content when he's in it. And he can help, as he is out on tour, as he does more social media stuff throughout the year, he can help drive traffic back to our site. So what is the exact, from your end, what are you going to notice different? We're going to have some collaborations throughout the year. So the first video already released. We've already filmed a second video with him. And then when we go out to tour stops, we're going to make sure we get a practice round in, that type of stuff. There might be a lull in his schedule where he's able to come back to Lynchburg to film some more. But I wouldn't expect a video a month. But we're going to try to get at least one or two a quarter. So throughout the year, you'll notice Ezra in content here and there. And the other thing to notice is there'll be we'll kind of do different releases with him throughout the year. We already have most of them planned out. So we'll do different fun releases with him that plays on his brand and our brand. And then we will also collaborate on promotion of just stock Discraft stuff. So he really likes the Malta. We'll probably get him to, put up a video throwing the Malta, driving people to our site, that type of stuff. So there'll be collaboration posts, and hopefully they're more creative than not. But there'll be collaboration posts throughout the year. We're really excited to be working with him. He's stoked to be repping Foundation. So yeah, that's kind of the upper, higher level view of that partnership and what to expect from that. It's not like he's going to be in every video from here on out. It's not like we're going to have a camera following him on tour. We're going to do some tour promotion with him as far as based on his finishing place or when he's on lead card, different stuff like that, so that we can hopefully engage our fan base to really follow him out on the road and be rooting for him. So we have a few ideas like that, but most of it is just collaborating on videos, collaborating on disc releases, and then promotion both ways. It felt like a really good fit, and I think it was really well received. The 10 Years 10 Milk video went off great. We were very worried about that internally, obviously, because who wouldn't be when you come up with an idea like 10 Years 10 Milk? We thought it was funny, and luckily we know our audience enough to think we were pretty sure y'all were going to find it funny, but that also could have flopped. So we were very grateful that it didn't, and that it was well received by everyone. So we had a blast last week. The SS Buzzro, which was his first disc, Buzz SS, is still live on our site. There's only a few left. There's not too many. But if you want to support him and support us, you can check that out. So, all right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. So 5 reasons the post-COVID slump, in my opinion, could actually be good for disc golf. Number 1, I talked about previously, but I'm going to reiterate it on again, which is disc golf companies as a whole. So this is manufacturers, retailers, tournament directors, the PDGA, the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Everyone who is running and influencing disc golf in some way, shape, or form has to be creative again. What do I mean by that? Well, during COVID, you could, and people did, get lazy because the funnel was just wide open. New people were just finding the sport without us having to do anything, and new people were finding people's websites, signing up for tournaments, all of that without any marketing having to happen or any differentiation. For instance, there was a time, if you were in the sport long enough, you'll probably remember this, where basically you have your big dogs up top, right, retailer-wise. I can only really speak as a retailer, but you have big dogs up top as retailers. And when Discraft or MVP couldn't fill orders because COVID shut down, stuff like that, we'll just use the Onyx as an example. So people go to site A looking for an Onyx. They can't find it. They'll funnel down to site B, which might have been like us, right? Okay, so now we're going to start selling more Onyxes simply because people's first choice, if it wasn't us for whatever reason, people's first choice was out of stock. Well, then eventually we're out of stock. And when we're out of stock of a disc, back in those days, it might be legitimately 3 months until you see that mold again, because manufacturers are having to run such a skeleton crew that they were just putting up like, hey, it was literally like, we're running passions today. How many you want? And like, that was it. And it was like, okay, I'll get 50 passions. And you were having to buy because also you didn't know when you were going to see passions again. So we were trying to buy a lot. But regardless, so let's say the Onyx now is sold out on our site. Well, they're going to stumble down to the next site, to the next site, to the next site. So you had smaller and smaller retailers were also churning through inventory without having to do any customer acquisition, without having to do marketing, without having to do anything like that. And it was a similar thing with tournaments and with the PDGA. People were at home. They were working from home, or they were laid off from their job, or whatever. They had stimulus money, and so they were looking for ways to spend it, and they were finding this new sport. They were exciting. Golf courses were either, some golf courses were closed. Some golf courses had pool noodles that you were hitting into instead of the hole, and they were excited to find a new sport, right? And not only find a new sport, but, there's tournaments going on in this sport, and so they're getting in, and tournaments are filling, and so by nature, people who are brand new to the sport don't have experience with tournament directors to know this tournament director sucks, this tournament director is great, this tournament director has awful player pack, this one has great. Nothing like that. It's just this tournament's full. There's a different one 25 minutes away, 30 minutes away. I'm going to play that one. And so everything was easy when COVID was at its peak. Well, now that stuff slowed, those same business practices aren't going to work, right? Because now stuff's slowed up, more so leveled out, because the peak, now people have got back to their normal lives, stimulus money's out of the economy, price of milk and eggs has gone way up, yada, yada, yada. So now we're leveling, right? As a sport, and really as an economy as a whole, but as a sport, we're leveling. And so in that, to still have success, to still have people buy your discs, to still have people play your tournaments, there has to be a reason. There has to be something different. You have to market to them. You have to stand out from the rest, because now where you had 1,000 people deciding, you might now have 100 people deciding. But what also shifted is, before, when COVID first started, it was 1,000 people deciding between 10 options, and now the funnel's flipped, where now it's 100 people deciding between 1,000 options. Those are obviously very drastic, but you get the picture I'm painting, where the options up top, there's more tournament directors, there's more tournaments being ran, there's more retail sites to shop from, there's more, you name it, up top in disc golf. And so when the consumer base was still wide, that expansion up top was fine, because there were still way more consumers than there was options. But as the consumer base shrinks and that top stays wide, well, now there's a smaller consumer base, but still a really wide array of options, meaning you have to stand out. So why is that a good thing for disc golf? Because it's going to force innovation. We've already somewhat seen it with the Buzzsaw, with Clash's Tone Plastic, the particle glow tempos. Like, people have to get creative. On the retail side, you can't just throw discs up and hope it sticks. You have to market and explain why your site's different. For us, we adapted and built out our sub boxes, which people absolutely love. We developed foundation care, where now when you're buying a disc, if you're in the US, you have 30 days to try it, because now we're taking out the risk of you buying. So there's all these innovations that are going to happen to help stand out, that ends up helping the consumer, and therefore will end up helping disc golf in the long run. Number two, players/consumers' voices matter more than before. This is all to do with that funnel I was talking about, right? Because before, if you have such a huge influx of players, then basically the players who have been around long enough, that have gripes with the PDGA, that have gripes with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, that have gripes with us as a company, that have gripes with any other retailer or a tournament director or whatever, there's a line of people behind them that'll fill their spot. So the gripe falls on deaf ears a little bit more when, it's hard to kind of hear and adjust when everything's working so well. When the PDGA is getting hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of new members, right? I don't know exactly their growth, but it was crazy. Then the members who maybe are upset about something, is a little bit harder to hear them, because it's working, right? We can't even keep up with all the new members coming in. Why are we going to try to fix something that's not broken right now? As that slows, and the same thing with retailers, right? It's the same thing with manufacturers, same thing with the Pro Tour, same thing with whatever. Well, now as everyone, and not only the sport, levels out, but also players who've gotten in the sport in 2020 have now been playing the sport for 5 years, So also now that honeymoon phase is over, and you start to experience some of the things that need to adjust in disc golf, some of the things that need to change. Well, now with it being a smaller crop of people, a smaller consumer base, those voices are a lot louder, meaning that people's opinions, the consumer's opinion, the player's opinion matters a lot more today versus 2021 at its peak when everything was crazy. Because when everything was crazy, really it was just like, well, if you're not going to buy from us, someone will, right? And that was the attitude a lot of people had. Whereas now if someone walks in and out of your door and you don't have a great experience with them, they might not buy from you. Like I said, small consumer base at the bottom, huge array of options at the top when it comes to pretty much most things. So if you put on a bad tournament, they'll just find another tournament to play in. When COVID started, realistically, there was me and one other PDGA tournament director pre-COVID in Lynchburg, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, I can think of 5 or 6 off the top of my head, and I'm not one of them anymore. And so what that meant was pre-COVID, there was like 3, maybe 4 tournaments in Lynchburg specifically throughout the course of the entire year. Now there's like at least 1 a month, 2 a month, sometimes there's even more. And if you expand it out to 30, 40 minute radius, you're talking a lot of tournaments. So that's another thing that I think is being overlooked is, tournaments aren't filling like they used to, but there's also sometimes 10 times the amount of options. Why that's a good thing for players but a bad thing for tournament directors, but a good thing for really good tournament directors is you have to be a good tournament director because there's other options. So before, you could be a bad tournament director, but it was like, well, if you want to play a tournament, you got to play mine. Now you have to be a good tournament director because I don't have to play yours. I can go pick someone else's. And so it forces people to actually be accountable for their actions, and it forces people to actually put out a good product and give people a reason to want to keep playing their tournament, a reason to want to keep shopping with their store, a reason to want to keep whatever. Point number 3 out of my 5 is companies have to care about the growth of the sport again. I'm not saying companies don't care about the growth of the sport or didn't, but I think during COVID, you didn't have to care about it that much because the sport was just blowing up from word of mouth. It's not like COVID happened and all of a sudden there was a shift and there was a new director of marketing for X, Y, and Z company, and that's what took it off. It was just word of mouth. Like people were looking for a way to get outside for cheap, a way to just kind of exercise, and disc golf checked pretty much every box. So word of mouth spread, and it was like, why don't you come out and play disc golf with me? And they come out and love it, and next thing you know, they tell 3 of their friends, and they tell 3 of their friends, and next thing you know, the sport blew up, right? So during that time, I'm not saying people pulled back their grow the sport efforts, but you didn't have to care about it from 2020 to 2022 nearly as much as you have to care about it today, because nowadays, with it leveling back out, if you don't grow the sport as a company, if you don't put efforts into that, growing the global sport in general as a company, then you're really not growing your consumer base. So if you're not doing things to make disc golf seem interesting to people, if you're not doing things that'll reach a lot of people with disc golf, and some people that's a local clinics, for other people, for us, it's a lot of content, right? I think content is what helped kind of get the sport in the forefront before, and we're, trying to just keep cranking content out to engage people, new players, but also take new players down the road of introducing to professional disc golf, give them podcasts, get them really introduced to, and get them through that life cycle, right? But you have to care about the growth of sport again, because if you don't care about the growth of sport, then your consumer base is slowly going to fall off. So I think that's also something that'll be good for disc golf, is because now we have to look at the growth of the sport again like we did pre-COVID. Number 4, and I think this is a good one that people need to be paying a lot of attention to, is we know what to prioritize as we begin to grow again. So when we got to the peak of COVID, and then there was the fall off, what we noticed was some things stayed around and some things fell off. So now as we begin to grow again, and we start to try to get back to where that peak level was, obviously rapid growth causes a lot of headaches, but now we know what works and what doesn't work because we went through it. We saw as the rapid growth and expansion what people actually want, what consumers actually care about. So what that means is now, if the right people are making the right decisions as the sport grows again, money and resources within the sport can be poured into the right things instead of, I don't know if this is going to work, let's just throw it at the wall and hire a bunch of people we don't need to hire, or throw it at the wall and put a bunch of money into whatever. I don't want to call out anything specific, but you can probably think of a few ideas that happened during COVID that we were all like, no one cares about that. What on earth are we doing? And it was just burning money. Well, now we know. So as the sport grows again, we know what works, we know what doesn't work, and we know where to put our money. And number 5, and I think this isn't really why the slump's good, I just think it's a good reminder for everyone. Number 5 is the sport is in a better and bigger place than pre-COVID. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the number in that spike that we forget where we were, right? And we forget about the amount of retail options. We forget about the amount of tournament directors, the amount of local stores, the amount of players, the amount of whatever you want to list it as, right? And COVID did a lot of good for the sport. And the pullback obviously is causing some pains. I think that it's over dramatized personally, how much pain it's causing disc golf. I think that it's causing certain companies a lot of pain, but I think that there's a lot of companies, and I've talked to a lot of companies that are like, I'm waiting for the slump to hit, just waiting for it. It hasn't hit yet. So I think that it speaks a lot to what's working, what's not working, and companies that are doing stuff that's not working are feeling the slump. Companies that are doing stuff that is working aren't feeling the slump the same way. But regardless, I think it's hard to look at the sport as a whole, and it's hard to remember, but if you think back, if you're a player that's been around a long time, and you think back to disc golf in 2018 and 2019, and you look at disc golf today, you look at the amount of courses in your area, you look at the amount of tournaments in your area, you look at the amount of players in your area, you look at the amount of content on YouTube just around disc golf, you look at the amount of people talking about disc golf in general on social media, you look at whatever metric you want to use, it's hard to find one that is worse than 2018. In my experience. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's data that can prove me wrong there. But in my experience, there's, at least in our area, more courses, more players, more tournaments. We have an in-person shop that is actually thriving, that when we opened Foundation in 2019, we literally didn't open an in-person store because there wasn't enough players to sustain it. And now there's not only enough players to sustain it, but it's actually a pretty strong arm of our business, our local in-person store. And the list goes on and on and on. So I think that's also an important thing to remember is although it feels like this big downturn, let's just say the graph started here, had a spike up to here and leveled to here. Here is still higher than here. I think that's an important perspective to remember. Whereas, maybe it's already leveled. Maybe we're still in the process of leveling and we got a little bit more of a slump ahead of us. Whatever it may be, I think that there is some really encouraging things to learn from the COVID peak and some really encouraging things for the future of the sport that can come out of this. We just have to be looking for them instead of saying, woe is me, my website traffic was X, is now Y. And it's like, well, what are you doing about it? And if the answer is, I was doing nothing before, I'm doing nothing now, then of course your website traffic is going to go to 0 eventually, because if you aren't growing, you're dying, more or less. So those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments, agree, disagree, any other points that I didn't hit on that you're like, oh, this is also something that I think the really good could come out of the post-COVID slump, if you will. But let's get to some questions. So I put out the prompt on Instagram, as always. If you're not following me on Instagram, hit me up over there. And on Monday, I always put out the prompt for questions. Got a bunch of good ones here. We'll start at the bottom with some of the ones that came in the earliest. Birdie Bogey DG said, thoughts on MVP gyro versus normal discs? It's always hard because what I don't have access to, and I don't know if anyone does, is the only disc on my desk right now is the Trash Panda Canyon. What I don't have access to, and I don't know if anyone does, is this Canyon, and then the exact same mold, exact same run with overmold, right, with gyro. Because that's what makes it hard for me, is if I had those two next to each other, then you can throw them and you can see, oh, the gyro one goes a little bit farther. Oh, because of the RPMs it's able to maintain, it stays flatter a little bit longer. It does X, Y, and Z. But what's hard about it is, let's say this gyro, when we're comparing it to, or this canyon, when we're comparing it to gyro, it's probably closest to like a tempo maybe, or it's like a slower pyro. But regardless, the point I'm trying to make is I don't have a direct comparison. So I can throw it and I can't tell, is that just the mold that makes it fly different, or is it something with gyro? I will say logically putting more weight in the rim makes sense that it's going to maintain RPMs longer, and maintain that spin rate farther down the flight. What that does is what's hard to know. And is it something that is actually noticeable, or is it, we're talking 2% or 5% farther, which means if you're throwing 300 feet, all of a sudden you're throwing 315. Is that even good math? I think that's good math. Like, is that actually that noticeable? I don't know. I don't really think so. I think that MVP and gyro have some really good molds, and they have something that is different from the market, which means it's something you can believe in. So it's something where I can throw it, and if one of the molds does work really well for me, I can buy in. And if you do believe it and you have switched where it's like, this goes farther because it's gyro, then your whole bag's going to be gyro, which is, I think, something that they have is very good for them. Because people who do buy in and do believe and become gyro knots or whatever you want to call it, their whole bag's going to be gyro, basically, because if you do think that stuff goes farther and has really good benefits, then why would you keep any non-gyro mold in your bag unless it's for a very specific purpose? You're going to become a mainly gyro person. Me personally, I like some of their molds, like the Trail's in my bag right now. Love the Trail. The Pyro is a great mold. The Photon I've had in and out of my bag. It's a great mold. The Octane's a lot of fun. The Crave's a lot of fun. So I'll put some of their molds in the bag just because they feel good in the hand. They fly good on the course. But I did a whole 30 days all gyro, and I didn't notice anything drastically different enough for me to say 100% this makes a noticeable difference to a human. It probably makes a scientific difference, but I don't know beyond numbers if it does too much. Always B. Lewis says, will Prodigy become a top brand in the next 3 years with Will up top? A top brand, no. I think that they can regain their mid-brand status, which would be above your niche brand, so above the Mint, ThoughtSpace, Lone Star, that type brand. But they're not going to compete with Discraft, Innova, Latitude, Discmania. They're far from competing with them. But I think they could get back to that middle of the road level for sure. I like Will a lot. I don't know anything about Will as a CEO or as a leader, so we're going to find out over the next few years. But I really like the move to put Will up top because I don't really know many people that dislike Will. And when you have a company's brand image crashing like Prodigy's was, it's good to kind of make the person the forefront that was still kind of the bright spot there. So I like the idea, but we'll see if it works. Let's see. Jaden Weinzel said, how do you grow a disc golf Instagram? Well, you grow a disc golf Instagram the same way you grow any Instagram, which is just consistently posting. You got to consistently put stuff out there. And it needs to be, ideally, it's something different than other people are posting. But the best way to do that is to just let your personality through. Because, I mean, you can go out there and, just throw a bunch of good shots, throw a bunch of aces, and probably some of them will blow up. But the problem is, you would have to almost just kind of become the ace guy. It's harder to build a brand off of that versus if you're making content where you're talking it a little bit or you're somehow letting your personality through. Maybe you're doing disc comparisons, disc reviews. Maybe you're doing some type of challenge where you're trying to get better at putting, and so you're putting X, Y, and Z, every day, whatever it may be. Something where your personality comes through, and then become a data nerd. So you got to pay close attention to your analytics. When a video does well, and well is relative, so for you, that might be when a video gets 200 views. For us on Instagram, that might be when a video gets 50,000 views. And then for, name any of your favorite influencers, that might be when a video gets 2 million views. So well is always relative, right? Because there's always someone who, yes, you might be looking at the person above you and they're getting 10,000 views, and they might be looking at a person above them that's getting 50,000 views. Well, they're looking at the person above them that's getting, there's always kind of someone ahead of you, especially in disc golf. There's always someone outside of disc golf that's getting more views. So there's always someone to compare to. So don't let your numbers crush you. But if you're getting 200 views and one gets 600 views, look at the data and see what happened. What is different that made this one get 600? There's an answer in there somewhere, and it might be very minuscule. And it might feel like that's not the answer, but then repeat and try to recreate it. And if you can find the secret recipe that recreates that, and now you're getting 600 views regularly. Okay, well, sweet. Now one might pop off and get 1,200. So become a data nerd and pay close attention to things such as average view duration, average view percentage. On Instagram, I think those are the big two, because you're talking mainly about Instagram. I would pay close attention to those two, and then pay attention to what type of post, what's different about a post that gets you reach beyond your following. So if a post all of a sudden has 75% non-followers viewing it, just look at the post, look at a post that had 75% followers view it, and ask yourself, what did I do different between these two? And something as simple as I wore a blue hoodie in this one, I wore a red hoodie in that one. Try wearing the blue hoodie again. Maybe I threw over water in this one. I didn't throw over water in that one. Try throwing over water again. Whatever it might be. Find something, repeat it. If it works again, okay, now you have a recipe and just kind of keep replicating that. So hopefully that helps. Dan Shield says, how do you balance life and family as a business owner? What rhythms help you in this? I think it's easier nowadays for me than it was when we were first starting. A, because when you're first starting, you're doing everything. But B, I used to work a lot from home, especially when I was doing graphic design, social media marketing, and foundation. I was pretty much always working from home. And what was hard then was I didn't have a kid. And so there was just a lot more free time. And so there was a lot of time where, we're done with dinner, we watched our show. My wife wants to watch like one of her YouTubers that she likes to watch. I got nothing to do. I'm gonna go back and work. I still have something to finish up on. Or it was really hard to because my office is just down the hallway, to clock out to even come to dinner. I'll be like, you know what, I'm finishing up. Let me grab my plate and go back to work, whatever. Versus nowadays, I actually have an office, an actual physical location I go to work. And that helps me a lot with being able to turn it off, go home. I'm still not great at it because there's always something you can keep doing. And the hard part for me is I really love it. And so there's sometimes where it's like, well, no, like when we were building out the website, what I wanted to do with my free time was work on the website because I was enjoying it. It was something that needed to get done. And so it was hard at home sometimes of just balancing that where, obviously I'm not going to sacrifice time with playing with my son but when we're my wife wants to sit down and read, or she wants to sit down and it's we're both doing something we enjoy, but we're not doing something together, you know what I mean? Those moments, it's really easy for me just to work. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that as long as I'm not sacrificing something else. But I think the big difference for me was having a physical location to actually work, because then it was very easy for my brain to switch off and be back in, I'm at home, but this isn't work time, this is home time. The other thing that's big for me recently is this app called Brick, because obviously a lot of my work's on social media, so I can spend a lot of time on social media, but this app's called Brick, and you buy this physical brick. Mine's in my bag somewhere, but what it allows you to do is you brick your phone, so you choose what apps you have access to, and the only way to unbrick it is to physically touch it to the brick. So basically I'll brick my phone when I get home, and I can unbrick it if I need to, if an emergency happens. But it's not like if you use the screen time on your phone, it's just a password that you set or whatever, and so you just can easily get around that. Or you can use set these windows, and you click on it, it's just give me 15 more minutes. Just give me 15 more minutes. And it's it basically, you can easily get around it. So it doesn't really work. But using that has also helped where when we do have down moments where my son's playing outside by himself, and there's much better things with my time I can do than sit and just doom scroll on Instagram. Well, when my phone's bricked, then basically all I can do on my phone is respond to text messages or answer phone calls, and that's about it. And so I can actually be productive. So that's another thing. It's $50 to buy the brick if you're interested. Very fun. Let's see. Kiefer _DG said, how do you get from 990 to 1010 rated? Asking for a friend. You're asking the wrong person, unfortunately, because that's something I haven't done. 980 something was as high as I ever got rated. So you already beat me out. Bearbite said, what is the best new disc golf content trend? Great question. I think most great disc golf content trends, most like pretty much most social media trends, come from outside of disc golf. Like people are throwing over their house. That was obviously Bryson DeChambeau. Sometimes there'll be a good one where like Simon did that challenge a year ago. But I think a lot of times it's just paying attention to what outside of disc golf is doing, if that makes sense. So paying close attention to what is like trending in other places, and then asking yourself, how can we bring that into disc golf? I think that's kind of a good spot to be. Okay, we'll go a few more questions. Jay Neal said, do you work out frequently during tour? I don't tour, so no, but I do work out frequently in the sense that I run. I run a lot. I actually have an IT band issue going on right now. Second time it's flared up on me. So I got to rest. So I'll probably no running this week or maybe some runs later in the week. But typically I'm running 15 to 20 miles a week. I'm training for a half marathon right now. So I'm ramping my miles up. So last 2 weeks were deload weeks. Well, 2 weeks ago wasn't supposed to be, but I turned it into one. I was busy. Last week was a deload week. This week was supposed to hit 25 miles. I ramp up closer to 30. But, IT band. So this will probably end up being like a 10-mile week, if I had to guess, based on how my IT band went last time. Let's see. Any other questions here? I'm going to go with like one or two more. Up and Down Disc Golf said, best business decision you think you've made in the life of Foundation. I don't know best ones I've made. There's a lot of group decisions, but I think the best decision we as a company made was when we pivoted from doing custom releases and diversified our retail store revenue streams. So we switched from, we used to do a custom release a month. I've talked about this several times. We used to do a custom release pretty much every month, and we pivoted to, we stopped doing that. We actually just did our first custom release in like 2 years or year and a half last July. Our second one is in this month's subscription box. There's a few spots left if you want to get in that. And by a few, I mean like 50, I think, right now. Maybe more. So if you want to get in on that, you can for this month. But that's when our next custom release is going exclusively in the subscription box, which is fun to be at that level where we can do that now. But switching from that and developing things like our subscription box, developing things like our text deal, our app, where there's a lot of different ways we have income coming in shopping-wise, I think that was one of the best decisions we've made sustainability-wise. Scumped said, are you guys up for a collab with Latitude 64's Jonathan? Of course. Don't know if he's ever in Lynchburg, but if we're ever in Sweden or he's ever in Lynchburg, we'd for sure be down. All right, and let's see. I'll take one more here. I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. I'm trying to wrap this up around 10 o'clock my time, which we're a little past right now. So we'll finish with this one. BF Frederick said, any insight on the Atlas Pro bag that has been mentioned? Still in the prototype phase. Our goal with Atlas in general is we want to provide bags that give you everything that you need with nothing that you don't at a very affordable price. Really, honestly, pretty easy to do for the mid-level bag, the one that we've released, the Pioneer. And that's the bag that I think even when the Pro bag comes out, the Pioneer is the bag I'll probably carry just because it fits what I need out of a disc golf bag. The Pro bag, we're still trying to find that line where we want it to be able to be taken out on tour. We want it to be able to go to whatever tournament you need, however many discs you need to carry. If you want to throw hoodies in it, whatever. But we want to stick very to our mantra where we eliminate stuff we don't need. So we eliminate stuff that's just going to add excess waste or waste and weight for no reason to the bag, and still have it be very premium, very comfortable on your back, and bring it in at a price that matches other companies' mid-level bags. So that's where we're still in the developing phase. So our goal was to have it in March. That's definitely not going to happen. But I would love to tell you it's going to be released this year, but I'm not going to put a date on it because you never know what's going to happen. Hopefully, we should be getting close to the final prototype, which once we get the final prototype, we'll test it for a little bit and then go towards production. But every prototype that comes in, there's something else we want to adjust slightly. We don't want to release this one until it is like perfect. So hopefully at some point this year, but I'm not going to guarantee anything. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you thought of my 5 reasons, and if you have any other reasons or anything like that. And also let me know if you're excited for the Ezra signing, as excited as I am. Don't forget to check out the site, all the new merch, the Ezra collab discs, a bunch of fun stuff happening over there, and I'll talk to you again next week.